Hi there, and welcome to this week's episode of Truffle Talks. I'm James Stephen, the editor of Truffle Report, and Truffle Talks is our new interview series where we sit down with the movers and shakers defining psychedelic business, policy reform, science, and culture. Joining us today are Cory Firth and Dr. Pamela Kryskow of the Canadian Psychedelic Association. For those who don't know, the Canadian Psychedelic Association is a not-for-profit organization that works through grassroots advocacy and membership, as well as higher level political and business avenues, to affect meaningful change around psychedelics in policy, healthcare, and I'd say just everyday life as well. They've been a big part of the drive to reschedule and increase access to psychedelic medicines, and maybe to alter some cultural attitudes and stigmas along the way. Pam, Cory, thanks for being here. Anything else you'd like to say about yourselves, your work, or the CPA before we begin?
Thanks, James, for having us.
Yeah, thanks, James, for having us.
Okay. Do you want to introduce yourselves a bit?
Sure, I can jump in. So I'm Pam Kryskow. I'm a medical doctor, primarily specializing in chronic pain. I'm also a professor at VIU and a clinical instructor at UBC, and the medical lead on two programs, Roots to Thrive, which is ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and the My Community Thrives, which is psilocybin-assisted therapy. And I've been a founding board member. I am a founding board member of the CPA and then remain a board member of the CPA right now, and passionately love the luxury of living in this time and watching things move as quickly as they are.
It really is a wonderful time to be watching psychedelics blossom in the sort of public policy and just general people's mind state as well. Mm-hmm. The awareness we're seeing is great. And Cory, would you like to go next?
Sure, yeah. I'm the executive director of the Canadian Psychedelic Association, and it's our mission to educate about and advocate for psychedelics as a basic human right. We're really focused on building community, sharing educational resources, and expanding the nationwide network. So to expand our advocacy efforts around the use of psychedelic plants in Canada, and lobby for access at the basic, at the highest level. This year has been a lot of focus on expanding legal access to psilocybin therapy, which I'm sure we'll get into, but our future really is on all psychedelics and entheogenic plants, or entheogenic medicine, sorry. Really excited about what's happening, and it's nice to be what seems like the cutting edge, although even though it's been going on for so long, right now, the last 12 to 24 months have been just such massive growth in such a short period of time. So really excited to see what's going on in Canada and also abroad as well, which I know you guys cover.
Okay, before we get any further, do you just want to define entheogenic medicine broadly?
Pam, you're the doctor. I'll let you speak.
Well, what I prefer to do is look at it, just go that we have medicines that expand consciousness, and we have classics, and we have plant medicines and fungi medicines. So we have molecule medicines like LSD and MDMA, and then there's plant medicines such as ayahuasca, wachuma, that come from the plant kingdom, and then there's the fungi medicines like psilocybin and amanita that come from the fungi. And all of them, work in different ways. Some are more heart-opening and empathic, and some are more introspective and consciousness widening. So I think that kind of, instead of going to the other word, let's just go this is a topic. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things in here.
All right. So I just want to start off by asking, what is the state of, let's say, psychedelic activism and lobbying in Canada right now? How engaged are the people you're working with in their day-to-day? Obviously, members of the Canadian Psychedelic Association will be more engaged than non-members. And how about in their actions with government? Are the membership a part of that interactions? With Health Canada, with altering regulatory frameworks. How many new people are you seeing onboarding into the CPA? Just give us a sense of where things are at.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's more active than ever, especially in the last 6 months. We've been expanding our community internally, of course, but the larger community of nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, citizen community members, all sharing, supporting, and advocating for the use of psychedelic medicine. I think what we've noticed, in my opinion, over the last year, as the media continues to pick up, the closet seems to be opening up as well, right? So not only do you have the classic outspoken individuals that have been around this scene for a long time sharing their messaging, but you have more individuals who are less and less afraid of sharing their story. And for me, that's a huge key. So what's going to happen over the next little while as we continue to advocate for policy change is more public opinion needs to continue to change and to share. And so, yeah, for us, our community is expanding internally, but our partnerships and connections externally, not only in Canada, but also abroad, are expanding as well. And a lot of that has come from the stories and the advocacy work that we've been putting out over the last 12 months or so. And it's been going well. That's my side of it. I don't know, Pam, if you had any additional elements of that in terms of the community and the lobbying efforts this year.
Yeah, and continuing on what Cory said, what I'm seeing as a physician is, 10 years ago, there wouldn't have been anyone in my professional colleagues to really talk about this with, and now everyone's talking about it. And, it's kind of interesting, we've been doing this work for a long time, and yet every single day I get an email from somebody new going, have you heard about this stuff? I think this might be something big. And I'm like, oh, the train has left the station.
As a matter of fact, I've been doing this.
This is long gone. And, we're having lots of fantastic, very mature adult conversations around psychedelics with city councilors, with provincial politicians and policymakers, with federal politicians and policymakers. This has become, it's moved away from the kind of giggling war on drugs junk, that childish conversation, into a scientific research conversation. I think what we're seeing is that there now has been a certain tipping point of people that in their private lives have had a psychedelic experience, whether when they were younger or more recently. And
I think I fall into that category. Just saying, I had a few of those recreational, well, we'll call them recreational and sometimes accidentally enlightening psychedelic experiences when I was at the teenager college years type of thing, and then left it alone for a while, and then got back in recently after seeing, wow, this makes a whole lot of sense. The experiences I had and the ways I felt when, experiencing these things really line up with a lot of really modern cutting edge research and a lot of other people's experiences. So from just my perspective, I guess we'll call it the new comfort level makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. It's replaced the old
discomfort level.
Well, and the old kind of propaganda of around it, of what it was, that it's like this crazy party drug thing. And I mean, certainly people are using it in that way too, but once you have a profound experience that shifts your life in a meaningful way, it's hard to ever kind of go back and look at it in the way, once those blinders have widened on the possibility, you can't really go back to the old way of looking at it in kind of that more infantile way.
Okay, so let's just talk for a moment. What have been some of the major breakthroughs in the past here in just terms of, the conversation's been evolving and that's great, but in terms of access to specifically psilocybin for medical treatment, Pam, I believe it was through Roots to Thrive, you were actively involved in the first legal psychedelic group therapy session here in Canada. So we'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, Verisil has done some groundbreaking work. Dr. Bruce Tobin, he has been absolutely, really just kudos to him for the work he's done and the patients he's had. He waited 5 years to heard nothing. And then finally, Health Canada started giving these Section 56 exemptions after his hard work. So really, people need to know Dr. Bruce Tobin was, held the boat on that for a long time. And there had been, I was trying to get the final numbers this morning, but I haven't heard back yet. But, at least 47, if not more, psilocybin exemptions have been given from across Canada with doctors and patients that have applied for that. And most of those had been one-on-one and kind of quietly done with really great therapists, really great physician teams, therapy teams, et cetera. But my group, I'm the medical lead of Roots to Thrive, and that's a group psychedelic program that really creates community and a healing container first and foremost. And what we did is we had 9 patients that had their exemptions, and we enrolled them in a group. They came into a group structure that is similar to the Roots to Thrive structure, and we just truncated it to 6 weeks. So create community, create set and setting, create intentions, and then they had their group session together, which was just mind-blowing. It was just absolutely amazing to watch these 9 people that had only 3 weeks before been complete strangers have this absolutely life-changing experience at end of life, to come together with other people experiencing the same issues and tension and anxiety in their life, to have this group psilocybin journey, and then also continue to integrate as a group. What we wanted to do is build on the work that had happened at Johns Hopkins and NYU, where the patients were saying they wish they had had more of a community to really discuss these life-changing experiences.
Yeah, sorry. Can we just walk this back for a second? Clarify this. This is patients with a terminal cancer diagnosis. Yes, the entire group therapy, and that's the majority of what we've seen for the Section 56 exemptions. I just want to mention that explicitly for our viewers.
Yeah. Everybody that was in our group had Section 56 exemptions for end of life distress or anxiety, and so they had to show that they have tried everything else to help with it, and then so that's what they qualified for. But that's changed. With the new federal health minister coming in, there's actually been a whole series of more Section 56 exemptions given for other conditions that could be considered palliative, such as depression, treatment-resistant depression, which, has a 30% suicidal ideation rate. And so we're seeing that trend now. We're seeing those people go through, and a colleague of mine, a physician colleague of mine, did 4 last week, 4 sessions for people who got their exemptions for depression. So we're seeing a change with the new government, or the new shuffling of the cabinet. We're seeing a new attitude, and hopefully what we can do is move this out of the bureaucracy. Is my hope, is that as patients don't have to ask the health minister or somebody who's not intimately involved with their healthcare, and instead that this become a decision between the patient and the physician, or their primary care, whether that's a nurse practitioner or whoever.
And I think that's a good place to jump off to Cory and get his thoughts in terms of dealing with that bureaucracy and moving to new ways of getting those patients access to medicine.
Yeah, I mean, the last year for us has just really been chipping away at finding our way through that bureaucracy. And it started for us with the Medical Assistance in Dying program. At the beginning of the year, there was a parliamentary review committee formed to take a look at the medical assistance in dying program. So we thought that was a way in. And that really led to a lot of the efforts that have happened across the entire community in Canada this year, where we looked at trying to figure out how psilocybin therapy could slot into that program and allow for patients looking to use that service, medical assistance in dying, as an opportunity to extend the quality of life that they have left, instead of...
I just want to, if I recall correctly, the provisions of the medical assistance in dying bill said that you could apply for assisted suicide, essentially, for severe depression and other mental health conditions, but not access psychedelic medicines. And the position of the CPA and a few other stakeholders in this effort was that was kind of absurd. That
correct,
that that psychedelic medicine is not an option before suicide is a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, what we've said is the right to die, you have the right to try. And that's where we kind of led in. And that was great. That really led us into some next steps, which allowed us to do some polling. And within those polling efforts, we found a number of really strong supporting data. But the one thing that really stood out was 78% of citizens that polled, and I think we had around 3,500 people polled, supported a government that would legalize psilocybin therapy. And that's when we really started to go, okay, well, what can we do? What's the next step here? And it took a few months, but we ended up developing a memorandum of regulatory analysis, which is a document submitted to Health Canada, which outlines some adjustments to the existing Cannabis Act and the Food and Drug Act, among many other acts, to allow for psilocybin therapy in Canada for those at end of life or experiencing end of life anxiety. And that's really just that kind of first step in the door with Health Canada to just kind of work on, like we talked about in the beginning here, is that breaking down of the kind of old paradigm to allow for some new options for folks that are at end of life or dealing with severe depression or anxiety. And that's been going really, really well. We've had some really great meetings, and we look to continue that into 2022.
All right, so that's a good jumping off point to then what are the goals in 2022? Do you realistically see the new regulatory framework being established? Is the we had an election here not too long ago. Is the new health ministry more receptive than the old one? Even though both were under the same Liberal prime minister, there's been a shuffling around. What sort of reasonable expectations are there?
Yeah, so
for the next year.
Go ahead,
I think we're going to see some movement here. The one thing that was really positive is that there was another position brought forward that covers this. So mental wellness, mental health, as well as the health ministry. So I think we're going to see some movement there. I think there's, this has been enough in the popular culture, and there's 77 psilocybin trials registered right now at clinicaltrials.gov. So this is moving forward. I think the academic side is moving forward. The business side is moving forward. This is a medicine that is available widely on the streets, in the underground. It's not like it's stuck in a laboratory. And so the governments, they really have to move forward on this for the safety part of it. If people are using it, it's their obligation to make sure that there's safe and efficient or effective use available for this. So I think they're going to lean in. I think the science is strong enough now. And I think we have meetings with them in January moving forward. We're seeing a higher level of understanding in our meetings with Health Canada now. At the beginning, they didn't really seem to have maybe the background, and now they're asking very good questions. And I think we're going to see some movement here. But, these things move slowly. And the way to really move these, if citizens, if 78% of Canadians believe that this should be available, the fastest way to get it there is for those Canadians to call their representatives, their local representatives, and tell them they're okay with this. And tell the opposition that they're okay with this, because that's where the government is the most worried, is getting attacked for their policies. But if all parties are hearing from their constituents, we want this, we want an all-party approach to this, that this is about healthcare, this is about citizens, this is not a political issue. This is a healthcare and a wellness issue, and it is critically important that we have access to medicines that work in a safe way. I think it's a win-win situation for Canadians and the government, but Canadians do need to speak up. Health Canada can't hear just from us. Even though I'm a doctor, they still want, and our whole team that sat in front of Health Canada are really smart, intelligent people that really understand the science. They still need to hear from the citizens of this country that they want this. And so if we hear that, I think we're really going to see that happen. So I'm excited about that. I think that is something we're going to see in 2022. Additionally, in 2022, I think we're going to see some movement of other medicines. MDMA is likely to make big jumps forward. We already have fantastic data around MDMA for wellness, or for PTSD, upwards similar ranges of success rates for PTSD with MDMA. So I think in 2023 at the latest, we should see MDMA in therapy, and other molecules. There's so many novel molecules that aren't scheduled. We will see those coming in. And, there is a cross Canada effort to bring all this, that we're starting to see these myceliations across the country at all levels to bring it forward. But you asked what else is coming that's exciting in the next year. 2 academic programs launching in Canada. So Vancouver Island University, their postgraduate certificate in psychedelic assisted therapy launches next year. So that will be, the first academic programming accessible so people will have academic credentials now to do psychedelic therapy. Additionally, the University of Ottawa is launching their master's program next year at the same time. So there will be 2 programs launching at the same time in Canada next year.
I think Queen's and the University of Calgary or University of Alberta might also be launching something too. I think I remember reading about that.
That might be happening. Yeah,
I know they opened their research hub, and the University of Calgary has something they opened up at the beginning of the year. I think there was there's a
Yeah,
school.
they announced a research chair, which is a
Right.
bit different from an academic program.
Yeah, not quite the same as a master's program or an actual credentials for psychedelic assisted therapy.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of research chairs open up across North America. So those are basically research institutes. So they're going to research, but for the first time in Canada, you'll have like Vancouver Island University and University of Ottawa actually
Teaching.
enroll in a program and have credentials. So that tells us things are moving forward.
Yeah. So Pam, before we move on, I'd like to go back to something else you said there about how it, this substance is already out of the lab. Psilocybin is already out of the lab. People are using it in the underground, and there are safety issues there, and that's really emphasizing that it is not a political issue, and getting it in front of the government in that way is what's going to move this forward. I would just like to say, in your opinion, is there a lot of bad psilocybin and bad psilocybin therapy going on out there? Is that a real danger here?
I think there's a continuum. I think there's there, like right now, obviously psilocybin, it grows. It's a kingdom. It grows out there, right? 2 months ago or a month ago, you could have walked out into the forest and found stuff in wood chips, right?
I mean, one of the it's you can find it just about anywhere. One of the fun things I've discovered about running a psychedelics publication is I am solicited by people trying to sell me mushrooms on Instagram just about every day. I'm sure you guys have this as well.
Oh,
yeah. So to speak to it, like, I have complete confidence that there are great growers and there are great suppliers and there are great therapists, and then there's also the other. And so the one thing that is, as this comes above ground, the responsibility of Health Canada and our governments is safety, first and foremost. So myself as a physician, I'm regulated. So if you have a complaint against me as a patient, you have a structure to deal with that. And in the underground, you don't have that. And so we're dealing with this right now where people are, I don't think it's the majority, but you have people that are having transgressions in the underground, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Right. You could.
There's no college of physicians and surgeons to complain to. There's no,
not in the underground, right? And so even though I think probably majority of therapists and people in the underground working are fantastic, and when this is legal, they'll be above ground and they'll be regulated. But still, like, what do you do with that? So I don't want to. I know there's great underground therapists because I know a lot of people that have left their professional job and are doing it in the underground. But I don't want to stop people from being able to do it in nature or in the safety of their own home. These things have been around for millennia, so who are we to say that you can only do it in a doctor's office or a lab? I would never advocate for that, but I do want to make sure that if people are providing mushrooms in commerce, that they meet the same standards as broccoli, at least, you know. And if people are,
and if a person is providing therapy as a service, they meet the same standards as a psychotherapist would.
Yeah. And if you want to have a mushroom kit at home, I mean, that's totally different.
Yeah.
If you want to go out into the forest and pick, that's totally different. But our obligation is to provide it. And the reality is 99% of people are more that are actually having mushroom experiences are having it with the mushroom. And all the clinical trials are using it with the synthetic lab-derived psilocybin. So this is not a crosstalk situation, and we have an obligation to do both. Like, we have an obligation to get those mushrooms into the trials.
Yeah, and the longer that this goes on, the longer we risk more and more potential harm with the underground and the black markets not being regulated. There's all kinds of liability there. So the faster Health Canada can move on this, especially with growing popularity. Like, I had, since Pam, the study that came out with microdose.me, which was a few weeks ago, I've had 47, I think, almost 50 people reach out and ask me about microdosing. And like, the only place that you can send them is into the black market and into the underground. And so there's a lot of error that could happen there, and we're talking about a fungi which brings all kinds of potential toxic harm if not done correctly. So what we really need to do, in addition to a legal framework, is is develop a safety and harm reduction framework as well. And Health Canada is very receptive to that. They know that they need that, and they've been looking to us at the CPA and within our coalition of experts to help them provide them the resources to the information and insight into developing those types of frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think that's a really good place to leave it. And I'll just say thanks, everyone, for tuning into this week's episode of Truffle Talks. Once again, I'm James Stephen, the editor of Truffle Report, and this has been Dr. Pamela Kryskow and Cory Firth of the Canadian Psychedelic Association. You can find us online at truffle.report or as Truffle Report on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and Truffle_Report on Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit. See you next week.